All right, welcome in. It is an October 17th, 2024 edition of the Horse Racing Happy Hour. Louie Bro hanging out with you solo tonight. We will have Ellis Starr along in a few moments, the Uber capper, if you will, to talk some Keeneland tonight. We'll make sure that we've got you set for the races on Saturday. We'll talk a little Breeders' Cup as we get closer to those dates, of course. I was thinking about, I'm actually flying into California 2 weeks from today, which is wild to think about. Reminder, we will have seminars in both Louisville and in San Diego. So if you're in Louisville here on the 29th, hang out with us at BA Colonial, 6 p.m. start for that one. No charge to get in. We'll make sure you're good and covered for that as we get ahead and set for Breeders' Cup. Will be out Friday night in San Diego at Excalibur Cigar and Scotch Bar if you want to swing by and say hi to us there as well. So we'll be hanging out at both spots the week of Breeders' Cup. Make sure that you are tuned in for both or for either if you can. Sunday night that week, man, oh man, to start the week, talk to our guy James Welsh there in Scotland. He'll get us ready for the shippers coming in from Europe, especially for those turf races. Always want to get his opinions on those. And the man follows a lot of dirt racing in the U.S. I'm sure he'll have lots of opinions on that as well. And look, we'll have our guy Matthew DeSantis back on that Monday. I like to do episodes around where people are in around the country, frankly, around the world. So we'll talk to James Welsh from Scotland, get those British Isle horses a little bit firmer as far as our handicapping is concerned. I think I'm like lots of people. You know, I pay attention to the European races, but I'm not at all sure that I'm totally dialed in on them. That's what James is for. But I'm on that Monday. We'll go to New York. We'll talk to our guy, Matthew DeSantis. I like to talk to people who see the horses essentially in person ahead of their trips to the Breeders' Cup. And I think that's a great opportunity for us with Matthew DeSantis there from Naira Bets. Wanted to make sure, sorry, too, that my microphone was in the right spot. But look, I think there's a real chance that we saw, for sure, at least some of the folks that we're going to see for Breeders' Cup. And I think almost certainly when we talk about these kinds of these showdowns, these matchups, whatever you want to talk about in sports, we can also talk about them as far as horse racing is concerned. But I think before we get to Breeders' Cup stuff, I got to address Luan Machado. And I know that people are interested in the conversation and the different things. I've seen a lot of different opinions. I've been really interested, frankly, in the conversation around it. If you haven't seen it, Luan Machado, and I think it's pretty clear at this point what did happen in the race yesterday at Keeneland. Maiden claimer, end of the day, Luan Machado has the horse on top, essentially 12-1 at the line, and he thinks he's won. Why does he think he's won? Well, there's two finish lines at Keeneland. You ever read me in the LA Times horse racing newsletter when that was a thing? You know that's one of those things that I cannot stand about horse racing, is that two finish line thing that we have at Keeneland, and I really wish it weren't there, but hey, I get it. And I even suggested on Rabot & Co., if you haven't listened, 10 to noon on ESPN Louisville here in the market or anywhere, frankly. Maybe we use that first finish line for those 4.5 those 4.5 furlong little baby races in the spring, and then we kind of phase it out. And I understand that Keeneland likes to run their mile and a 16th races, especially at the shorter finish line. We even asked Brad Cox a couple Fridays ago on Rabot & Co. if he used the shorter stretch at Keeneland to kind of predict whether his horses were going to do well when they got to Del Mar, given the similar, length of the stretch between that shorter Keeneland stretch and obviously the short one at Del Mar. And he said yes. So actually, frankly, for him, it's a good predictor of the horses that are going to do well when they're there. But Machado thinks he's won the race. He stands up with with at least a 16th to go. And James Graham, of course, goes flying by. There's a carryover in the pick six after that. Almost certainly someone sitting out there on an $18,000 winner in the pick six doesn't get paid on it. And all of that is consequential for sure. Because at the end of the day, the difference between horse racing and other sports is very simple. If sports betting went away, we'd still have the NBA. We'd still have NFL. And for years, we filled in the gaps on the NFL on the gambling side at least, in places that aren't Nevada and aren't New Jersey, these kinds of things, with fantasy football. And sure, that filled in the gaps. And now I think a lot of people are moving away from fantasy to betting, touchdown parlays and that kind of stuff, where they can apply those skills that they learned in fantasy football toward football and toward football betting. But in horse racing, the source of revenue largely comes from bettors. And the integrity of races, the integrity of wagering has to be at the highest level of horse racing. It simply isn't an option. And I've seen people that have said what I think too. I think it's an honest mistake. I think Luan Machado picked the wrong finish line to stand up on his horse. I think if he rides the horse through the other finish line, he wins. I think it's not even a question. Costs the owner somewhere in the neighborhood of $18,000 to $20,000 on the winning. And so it's a serious matter. It really is. And I don't want to underplay it at all. That's why I think you got to give Machado a long suspension. And I haven't seen an official word on it today. I know he had his mounts at Keeneland today. But I would put it at multiple months, because this is the kind of thing simply put in a wagering sport, in a sport built on wagering, that we simply cannot have. And so I'm not interested in how nice he is, or if he's never done this before, or all of those sorts of things. I think you have to throw the book at him, because it has to be a message to everybody in the sport. Hey, we're not going to put up with this. And I think at some spots you would see really serious suspensions. I've seen a lot of banter, a little too much, frankly, about Hong Kong recently on Twitter. And, oh, there's a regular rider there who made this kind of mistake, and it was a dead heat. So he even still won the race, quote unquote, as I do air quotes for the people listening on a podcast. But I don't think that matters, man. I really don't. I don't think those things matter. I don't think those examples matter. I think what matters is what we're trying to establish here, not just in the United States, but especially in Kentucky. There's a lot of money here now. There's a lot at stake in the state of Kentucky at this point. I think it's way too important. The integrity of that wager, the integrity of people coming to the track and thinking the jockeys are really trying for them. I think that really matters. And I think Juan Machado should probably get a 60 to 90-day suspension, something like that. I know it seems unfair. I know if he doesn't ride, he doesn't make money. I know. But if someone has to be the example that we never get this again, or we don't get it very often or whatever, I think that's the better outcome there as far as the Juan Machado is concerned. But looking at the Breeders' Cup, I think it is interesting. And I wrote about this at the Sporting Tribune. You can find us at thesportingtribune.com. That I think the showdown that we're all watching for in this case is that distaff showdown. And we just talked about that short stretch there at Keeneland and the short stretch that we'll see at Del Mar. We've got two in the distaff that I think are really going to like that short stretch in Idiomatic. And of course, in the 3-year-old and Torpedo Anna. And if you made a case for either, I think I would listen. I think I would be probably on the same page. We watched Torpedo go to the front, win the Oaks. We've seen her come from off the pace in other races. The Travers comes to mind, of course. The Cotillion, she had to work between horses to get to the lead. Idiomatic, though, we know her style. She wants the front. That's where she's going to be. And I think those two will try to be near the front, for sure. I think Idiomatic, of course, wants the front. And I think that Torpedo Anna is going to be comfortable being a little bit off. I think she's going to have to push, and she's going to have to make her push. But in the case of the distaff, I think you're looking at two really, really well-matched horses. I see a lot of consternation about Next on Twitter as well. People concerned that he should run in the Classic, that he owes it to the sport or something. The ownership owes it to get him out of that marathon division that he's dominating. I don't know why that's the ownership's prerogative at all. Why would they not want to pick off 6-digit checks when they can? I think that's how it should go. And so I don't think we'll see him in the Classic. And frankly, I wouldn't want him in the Classic if I owned him. Our guy Steve chimes in. If he gets suspended, doesn't that mean it would only be in Kentucky? He could go ride anywhere else because there's no centralized governing body, or is that not correct? It's a great question, Steve. The answer is no. The other states, at least within the United States, go with what the stewards decide in the other jurisdictions. So he would actually be out. We saw this a couple years ago, or maybe less than 2 years ago at this point, with Ira Ortiz Jr. in New York. He was suspended for a month. And what did he do? He had to go to Puerto Rico to get mounts. He couldn't go to Florida, couldn't go to Kentucky, couldn't go to California, couldn't go to Louisiana, even Texas, whatever. Had to go to Puerto Rico. And I think a guy like that, in Juan Machado's case, he'd really be up a creek, man. And maybe he'd go to Puerto Rico, try to get some rides there. I don't know. It's his business for sure. But in his case, I do think you got to give him days. And I got to think, in my mind, really, I think it has to be pretty steep. And I know that stinks. I see a lot of people coming to his defense today. I'm not mad at that, by the way. I think it's totally legitimate. I think if I ran a red light and took somebody out, people would say, Louis actually not a bad driver. He's not a bad guy. And everyone would say, can't run a red light. And I think that's where I fall on this is, yeah, I get it. Good guy. Honest mistake. I don't think he tried to do it at all. I've heard reports that he was extraordinarily upset after the race. I believe it. I do believe it. But in a sport built on wagering, on a sport built on that wagering dollar coming in to pay for everything else, we got to be really careful about that. We have Eric Campbell back on this show from time to time, certainly on the Kentucky Racing Spotlight. And he's president of HBPA. The only thing he talks about is the owner, the better. The owner, the better. If we take care of the owner, we take care of the better, we'll have a sport forever. And he's right. That's how this works. Obviously, you need tracks to put on these competitions, but there's money. Someone will jump on and pay for those things. And so in my mind, for sure, you got to give him days. And I think you got to be pretty serious about it, even if it's not intentional. These things matter. My dad tells a story of his very short, terrible high school hockey career. He'd forgotten to take a skate guard off. He fell on the ice. He tripped a kid. And he got a penalty, and that was his only action in high school. Honest mistake. But guess what? He went to the penalty box for it. Really happy to welcome in Ellis Starr, the Uber Capper here to the Horse Racing Happy Hour. Hasn't been on in a minute, but Ellis, good to have you back. We're talking Juan Machado like everyone else on the planet. How are you today?
I'm doing great, and was just talking about that with somebody else, and someone said they heard, I don't know if it's true, I've got to look it up, but it should be on the commission website that he's got 3 days, I believe, and $2,500. That's enough to send a message. He will probably never do it again, and it was just really unfortunate. And sometimes, when that happens, they hear the other horse coming and they pick it up again and get lucky and hold on to the win. It didn't happen in this case, but I thought it'd be 3 to 5 days. The stewards have discretion. Okay. I think I might be a little chauvinistic about Kentucky, but I think the stewards, Chief Steward Borden, and those are the best stewards in the country, and they really understand the bettors, and also that they put the jockey on the board to come in, already view the videos. And you just have to let everybody know you're protecting them as best you can, and as well as sending a message to the jockey. You can't do that. You've got to look at your program and see where every race ends, so you know where you need to ride. And Keeneland's unique, by the way, in case you didn't mention it, but no knock, Laurel and Oaklawn for sure have 2 finish lines. Other tracks do. I don't know if they do, but Keeneland puts up that red sign. They call it a bullet. Looks like a stop sign. And the jocks know that if the sign's up, that's where the race ends. He looked at the mirror at the 16th pole. The sign wasn't up. He still thought it was over. He didn't put the two together. It hardly ever happens, but it's not the first time it's going to happen. It's not the last time it's going to happen. And, of course, it's happened in history with Shoemaker and the Derby and other things. So, I mean, not to discount in any way, shape, or form, but I think if it is true that it's 3 days and $2,500, 3 days for a guy like that, it's going to be a few $1,000s in lost earnings as well, and it'll send a message.
So do you 3 days totally fine? You're good with that kind of suspension? Because I'm hearing I'm seeing things online like longer than that.
But let's seriously. If a jockey causes another horse or jockey to be injured, 15, 20, 30 days. Okay, sometimes longer. It really is. This was a human error, and I'm not discounting anybody that had a bet on the horse. I had no dog in the fight, but let's be nice. Okay, this is a kid that is just starting his last 2 years. He's been at his best. I think he had $4 million in earnings last year, $7 million. That's for all his horses, not just winners. But he rides about 100 winners a year. And with the purse structure in Kentucky, 100 winners a year, let's just say an average of $40,000 purse, that's $2,400. So that's $250,000 a year plus $125 for every race he rides, the other 800 and something. And he's only going to get better. Over the next 10 years, it's $5 million the guy's going to make, probably, or more, in the next 10 years. Okay. It was a mistake. And the best, by the way, the best tweet I saw today on one of the threads I posted was someone just said, Bill Buckner. That was it. I said, that was it. Yeah. That's all you got to say, right?
All right. Yeah. I think you need to be harsher than 3 days. A lot harsher, frankly, but it's more Ellis, because all of the funding in horse racing comes from the better. And if we look at that race and you're on the outside looking in and you see guys just standing up and letting other horses run by, the optics are so bad. And I understand, by the way, I understand all the stories about the Axeman, about Machado being a good guy, young guy, figuring it out, all these things. Yep. Sounds like he was very remorseful after the race. I get all of it. I do. But man, at the end of the day, the money comes from the owners. It comes from the bettors, and we got to take care of those two parties.
Well, there's a fine line, and I did tweet this out today. There was a fine line between punishing the guy so it doesn't happen again and being punitive. There's an old saying that horse thieves weren't shot for stealing horses. They were shot so more horses wouldn't be stolen, which is about sending a message to other people. That doesn't work anymore. You know what I mean? In terms of the other jocks in the room aren't really going to try it any differently than they know that. He stopped riding because he thought he won the race as opposed to any other reason. I could see 5 days. I could see maybe 10. But after that, you get punitive. But it's enough
Okay.
of a message for a kid. I think a kid that it'll never happen again, and maybe other jockeys too. But you can't do much more than really tell them. They don't talk to their agents, nobody at the track. They got to look at the programs they have in the jocks room, and they have to say, "This is where the race is. I have to ride to the wire," and not get cocky. He gets excited when he's in front by 5 and he didn't hear the other horse coming and it nailed him. And it does look bad. But the punishment has to kind of be that fine line, as I said.
Okay. Ellis Starr with us. You mentioned your Twitter feed. Tell people where they can find all the stuff you're doing.
It's just at Uber Capper, and that's where I post almost everything. I do have the same thing on Threads, and really, I mean, I do a race of the day for Keeneland. I do a race of the day for Sanity's website. They're all available free. I do a race of the week for Equibase, which is usually the feature week race on a Saturday. Like for this week, it's the Raven Run, which is also found on America's Best Racing and the Pollock Report. And I do a couple of I never know who anybody's sponsor is, so I don't mention, but on my Twitter feed, I do a couple of blogs. I do a couple of blogs for ADWs, Keeneland Select, and AmWager. Again, free, no paywall, nothing else. If you want to sign up for an account, that's fine. But it's just content that I've been doing for 25 years to not only give picks, but to put people in my head if they're interested of what goes into it. I say all the time that none of us that love handicapping the races should ever stop learning. I get more out of conversing with folks like you, other handicappers, people I meet at the races about why they like a horse or maybe something they saw that I didn't. It all goes into this brain of ours, and I never think I have it all. So I try and do the same thing by imparting my methodology in easy to understand terms of what I saw in the PPs or in a video that somebody else can use when it's a race I didn't handicap that they're looking at and maybe find some value.
All right. Well, he's at Uber Capper and he's on 708 websites. You heard the man. So go find him. Lots of places to go find him there. I wanted to ask you just a little bit about, no problem at all. I wanted to ask you, it's your second trip on the show here. If you allow yourself to start looking forward to these Breeders' Cup matchups and maybe like what that last turn, that second turn in the distaff will look like with Idiomatic and Torpedo Anna. Do you allow yourself to kind of run those races out?
So the honest answer is no. Many years ago, I was asked to do like top 10 lists for the Derby and for Breeders' Cup. And I find that gets my head in the wrong place because I want to wait until I see who exactly is running and the makeup of the race in terms of pace, shape, and stuff like that. So I really don't. Certainly, it's hard as a human being to not remember a horse I saw either on TV or live at Keeneland or Churchill, where I'm local to Kentucky, where I saw a horse that ran really well. It's difficult to do that, but for the most part, it's one of the joys of not only being. I just turned 65. One of the joys of being older, one of the joys of doing this is my brain can be a sieve sometimes, and it's fantastic. Because when I open a race card, I mostly forget anything about these horses' histories unless it's a horse I had a big score on. So the answer is no. I don't think about it until I actually see the draw on the fields, and then I take a look at it and hope that I'm not. Hopefully everything's objective at that point and not subjective about a horse that I love for some other reason.
There you go. Well, all right. Do you have a favorite between Idiomatic and Torpedo Anna? I'm going to ask you anyway. If they were
I got your note. So yes, I like. Idiomatic has actually run faster, at least in terms of the Equibase speed figure, this year than she did in the Spinster coming into it from last year.
That's right.
I think she ran a little faster. And yes, Torpedo Anna can win on the lead, but she also can rate. Idiomatic's not going to rate. She's going to go. And she's the kind of horse we've seen throughout history. And I can't name them all because I'm a horrible historian, but she's the kind of horse throughout history that when she gets on the lead and starts getting into her stride, she gets so brave that the mental component kicks in and she'll look at a horse in the eye and just say, no, you're not going past me. We've seen a lot in the distaff over the past few years. So I love Torpedo Anna, but if it was a match race, Idiomatic beats her 9 times out of 10.
And I think that short stretch at Del Mar plays very well to Idiomatic as well. So it'll be interesting to watch. I think what you said about Torpedo Anna, though, to her credit, is true that she can run different styles. We saw her off the pace in the Cotillion, certainly off the pace in the Travers. A little less time to make that move at Del Mar, so I'm sure she'll be in much more of a stalking position. The Classic this year, I feel like the last couple of years, and then we got the favorite last year, of course. So what the hell do I know about horse racing? But it feels like it's been kind of an open division the last couple of years. Is this the year we could get a 3-year-old again?
Well,
I think for sure, right?
I've been hearing a lot about City of Troy. Haven't we all?
You and everybody else.
And
That's
I
right.
watched a couple of his races, and just he's a beast. The question is whether he could be a beast in California. I don't know. All the Europeans that have tried
Right.
dirt haven't done that well. I really liked Arthur's Ride when he run, but he's a horse that
Hmm.
hasn't run since. I'm waiting to see what goes on here with all the horses that are training up to the Breeders' Cup Classic. I do tend to like 3-year-olds. Of course, Dornock's out now, so you can't use him. Sierra Leone, those they didn't do much. So if Torpedo Anna, but she's not going to go in the Classic. I really think that probably a horse like City of Troy that again is so confident in coming into the race first has an edge. Normally, I would like an older horse, particularly one that's a 4-year-old. But at this point, based on the horses I'm seeing that are likely to be in the race, I think it'll be a 3-year-old.
Wanted to ask you kind of a little off the wall question. We're going to San Diego this year and next. Where should the Breeders' Cup be after that?
Well, again, this is not me being a chauvinist or a homer for Kentucky, but the reason Keeneland's investing millions of dollars, the reason Churchill invested millions of dollars was mostly for Derby, but Keeneland didn't do it for Derby. The reason Belmont's investing, so the construction at Keeneland can add a few more thousand seats. So really some good venues looking over the paddock, and of course they'll put up temp. So they're supposed to be done before the fall meeting next year, but not for Breeders' Cup, just in case construction delays occur. It's my understanding. I don't have inside information. So Keeneland 27, 26. I don't know. It should probably go to Belmont if Belmont's done, or Churchill.
Okay.
And I think we need to go back to a West Coast, East Coast rotation. Of course, the weather's iffy. We know that. And we lucked out last time Keeneland hosted the Breeders' Cup. It was 70, 70 degrees.
It was windy, but it was 70. You're right. Yeah.
Right. Well, it's gonna, believe it or not, it's going to be 70 Friday, 72 on Saturday, 74 on Sunday, and 75 on Monday right now in basically the third week in October. So never know.
You never know.
Last time was Churchill. I remember it was 50, the Zenyatta blame year. So, it was 50 and it was pretty miserable. But I think it should go to New York or Belmont or Churchill 26, and then maybe Keeneland 27, then back to California. But if they do it 1 year in, 1 year out, I think they're going to have to change it a little bit. So one of the tracks, probably Keeneland in 26, California 27, Belmont 28, maybe Churchill in 2030. I'm thinking way out in the distance. But I think those tracks can host it. They want it. They've built some tremendous amenities for the fans. Belmont's new thing is going to be beautiful for the kind of thing the Breeders' Cup wants with all the upscale amenities. Churchill already has that beautiful new Sports Illustrated venue on the first turn, the home stretch on the far turn, the suites. So they're set for it as well.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think it needs to move around a little more than that. And I think, frankly, they're at Del Mar 2 years in a row just because of the construction happening at the places you mentioned. Belmont's not ready right now, right? And frankly, it's just not ready. Hell, it's not ready for any race. And Keeneland isn't going to be ready to host that kind of event again until 2 years from now. So I agree with you. It's probably going to start making those rotations. Boy, Ellis, I got to tell you, if you can't have a turf course in September, I'm not at all sure that you should have Breeders' Cup in November. So we'll have to see if they get that righted down the street from me here in Louisville. I want to remind you, though, our show is presented by Manscaped, manscaped.com. You can use our promo code of horse racing. You'll get 20% off your order there and get the free shipping. My 14-year-old son is getting a bad mustache, so I bought him a little foil to start cleaning up that mustache, start looking like a little more of a presentable gentleman, if you will, as much as you can with teenagers. So check it out, manscaped.com, promo code horse racing, 20% off and free shipping to your house. Now it's time to handicap, and we are headed back to Keeneland for the weekend. Ellis, I think an underrated day of racing. I love these 2-3-year-old, longer sprints here, the Raven Run, the Perryville. They are clearly, in my opinion, trying to get this Perryville to more than just a grade 3. Do you think I'm reading the room right there by adding money to it and trying to get it up to certainly the graded stakes is good, for the stallion ranks, but I think they're trying to get to more of a grade 2 with this race.
It'll be a grade 2 in a couple of years. It's a great race. They got the Lafayette in the spring, which is not graded at all. Perryville used to be not graded, now 3. It'll all depend on what some of these horses do. If somebody comes out of this race and runs in the Malibu at Santa Anita on opening weekend, and runs in a grade 1. This has to go to a
Good
grade
point.
2, for example, or runs in, I'm saying even stretches out, runs them Remsen. But these are really sprinters for now. I don't think you're going to see anything that's really a 2-turn horse out of here. But I think they can do that.
Yeah, and I think the 7 furlong 3-year-old thing, there's not a lot of these races this time of year. And this is a very, very high level version of that. It is race 7. It's the start of the late pick 4 there at Keeneland. As we mentioned, 7 furlongs on the dirt for 3-year-olds, $300,000 in the kitty for this one. They call that a grade 1 in other states there, Ellis, the old 300,000. Look, Bookham Dano's in here, and if you just look at speed figures, I think you would fall in love, and you should. Very talented horse. Not his best showing, frankly, last time out in that grade 1 Jerkins at Saratoga at this distance under Javier Castellano. We'll switch to IRAD on Saturday. Is he a deserving favorite here?
He is a deserving favorite because he's bitten 2 grade 1s, the Woody Stevens and the Jerkins, even though he was third in Jerkins, but of course he wasn't favored. He was, in the Woody Stevens, he wasn't favored. And then in between that, the non-graded Jersey Shore. But the 7 furlong races are really what's count. I'm a handicapper. Most of them are. When you're looking at 7 furlong races, you want to find 7 furlong form first. And he's got that 7 furlong cred, the 12-length win at Tampa and the Pasco in January. Then, he only got beat ahead in the Saudi Derby when he went 2 turns. Comes back and wins the Woody Stevens again, wins the Jersey Shore. And then Alan Jerkins was okay, but domestic product, I think now is retired. Ran a good race in the race. So he's a deserved favorite. Whether he's that much better than them is really arguable. This happens to be the race I wrote for one of the blogs talking about Keeneland Select. And I have the 1 Henro on top. I have Houday second, the 4. I have Bookham Dano and Knightsbridge as contenders. And I'm going to skip for 1 second to talk about betting strategy, only because people, you might ask me, but what do you do? Well, you split the favorites. First of all, you don't play exactas, either short-term, long-term, with Knightsbridge and Bookham Dano together. So it's really easy for me. For example, I play Henro and Houday over Henro, Knightsbridge, Houday, and Bookham Dano. Turn it around, play Henro, Knightsbridge, Houday, and Bookham Dano over Henro and Houday. If Henro and Houday run 1-2, you got twice, which is where you're maximizing profit. That's the first thing. That's the only time I talk about value in terms of exactas, because I'm more of a win better. But Henro is a really interesting horse. Talk about you just mentioned a comment. So the Harrods Creek at Churchill, $295,000. I think the reason it's 295 and not 3 is because at 3 there's some threshold. I don't know what it is, but whatever it is. But the difference between 295 non-graded and the Prairieville 300 graded is 0. It's the same race to me. He just won it, and it was visually impressive. 4 wide, going away, 7 furlongs. Bejarano. He's a versatile horse too. Before that, he won the Iowa Derby. Again, comparing buyer speed figures, I look at Equibase as well. He's faster. There's no question on both. I'll just give you the Equibase speed figures. The last 3 races, 107, 108, 105. Henro was a 101 in the Harrods Creek. Henro also on June 6th in a classified allowance at Churchill, beaten 3/4. He got a 103. So still a little short, but these are still 3-year-olds. They're still growing. They're still maturing physically, mentally. Henro is just a horse I can't resist because he shouldn't be 12-1 against 2-1 for Bookham Dano. He's not 6 times less probable. So that's why I like him in terms of why he's my top pick, so to speak, and one of the keys. Houday is the other one. Houday was second in the Lafayette in the spring. Then he stretched out and he ran the Pat Day Mile. He ran 4th, third in the second in the Matt Win. Then he ran 3rd in the Yellow Park Derby, but it was a horrible race. But that's that kind of weird 1.5 turn race. And then Belterra, he won a classified allowance. Now he'll be underbet because it's Belterra.
Correct.
But I'm sure you follow Kentucky racing. Tom Drury is a heck of a trainer. He starts a lot of horses at Belterra, and he trains for McAfee. He trains for Claiborne. He's a 20% trainer. He's a graded stakes winning trainer. I don't care the horse is a Belterra. He just wanted to get this horse mentally in a state where he could win this. Very funny pedigree thing using Racelands I did is just looking up, even though the horse has enough races. Not only is Houday got 5 wins, 2 seconds, and a third in 9 races, but he's a full brother to a horse named Everett Song, who I looked up, who won the 2021 Harrods Creek, the same race that Henro won this year. So it's very fascinating to me. The same breeders bred this horse back and got another horse that's already won almost 400 grand. So that's why these two are my top picks for value as win bets and keys. And no knock to Bookham Dano at all, except for the price. And Knightsbridge, Yeah, I mean, he's won 2 huge races, big layoff one time, layoff again. He could fire. I trust Bill Mott. Bill Mott we trust, as we say. In case you didn't know, he's a half the Speaker's Corner who won the
Yep.
Carter. So I think this is
Yep.
right up his alley at 7. I can use him, but that's how I'm seeing this race to start off the sequence of the pick 4. I'm going to use all 4, but in the race itself, I think I'm going to try and make some good money in the exactas.
How do you handicap a horse like Locke that's coming off a huge layoff from September of last year, coming back for the first time this year?
Yeah. So I wrote a note. I'll stop because I don't think he's running. I wrote a note that said his workout at Saratoga was October 12th, so he would have had to ship, and I don't think he shipped. And a little birdie told me that he's not shipping, so I can't say for sure, but I believe that's the case. If I was to do it, I would say I'm not sure that they're doing much more than getting him prepped again, even though Todd Fletcher's great off a layoff. They're prepping him probably for a race like the Malibu, as I said. This would be to go to a grade 1 in December 26th.
Or set him up for a cigar mile, something like that, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it really could be
that
kind of race, in a couple of weeks up there in New York. Ellis Starr with us at Uber Capper on Twitter. You can find him there. There's an allowance in the next race, a mile and a 16th on the turf there for 3 and 3-year-olds and up for non-3 lifers, essentially 130,000 in this one, or a grade 3, they would call this in California. A really fun sort of balanced field here, Ellis. Irish Aces has been really close many times. The 3-year-old, the 3 horse, excuse me, here. The 10 Dripping Gold comes in out of Kentucky Downs. And I wanted to ask you about that angle. We've seen Kentucky Downs horses this year come out. Boy, the next race out has not been fantastic. Is that a sense of yours? Are you using that to handicap a race like this?
There's so many horses coming at Kentucky Downs, and I really can't make heads or tails of it. Honestly, you get horses that run lousy there because they don't like the uphill, the downhill, the right-hand turn. You get horses like Dripping Gold who won by 6. You have to just really consider it. I'm going. I don't know how big the ticket's going to be. Right now, I'm 5 deep. I may cut it. But the Kentucky Downs races are interesting. I can't take a stand against a horse like Dripping Gold because he ran so big, 6-length win, 110 equibase speed figure, which is like by far, well, it's the second best in the field of third. It's tied for the second best with a couple other horses I'm going to mention. But on the other hand, and this is, talk about handicapping and talk about methodology, and hopefully most listeners understand this. This is a non-winners of 3 other than maiden or claiming allowance. This horse had 9 tries at the non-winners of 2 claiming level allowance. And they were good tries, but he was beaten at 2-1, beaten at 5-2, beaten at 9-5, beaten at 9-5, beaten at 6-5. And then he wins at 7-2 at Kentucky Downs. He's got 3 wins in 3 seconds and 4 thirds. He's no standout. I think there's value here in a couple others, specifically the 1 and the 2, Paris and Bold Discovery. There's also a case made for taking Candy, except for the outside post, but he's been first or second in 4 straight. And Irish Aces, who you mentioned, who was really dropping in class and won at Keeneland a year ago. But I really, if you don't mind, I'm also going to talk about the first 2. Paris is, I'm a big Mike Maker fan, especially on the grass. But Paris is interesting because he's won 3 in a row. He was claimed for $40,000 by Maker at Saratoga, puts him right into the 2X level. He doesn't crush the field, but man, that was visually impressive. 7-5-1 from the quarter to the 8th to the finish. And the last quarter mile, the pace wasn't hot. He ran the last quarter mile in 22 2/10. Okay, that is just smoking. Irene Ortiz gets off to ride Miranda Rights, who I can't really figure for Mark Casse, even though he rode the horse to a 3rd and a 4th before. But I don't mind. Saez rides a lot for Maker, and he's going to ride Paros here. That 111 equibase speed figure, as I mentioned, is the best last race figure in the field. And just the fact that he ran so fast from the rail, he can save ground if Saez gets a hole, boom. And he's a horse that either wins or nothing. 6 for 15, 4 for 7 on grass, no seconds ever. 8-1, definitely value. The 2 Bold Discovery, and most folks know this isn't about medication, but when horses run in Europe or South America and they come here in an allowance race and they run on Lasix, my theory is to discount the bad races and look for the good one, assuming that they bled in their few races. Otherwise, they'd have 6 months off, 12 months off, or they'd be banned in other countries. Again, this isn't pro Lasix, Louis. This is just talking about the fact of handicapping.
Yeah, sure.
Today, Thursday, I like two horses, strong opinions. I haven't had any yet. One was an Argentine shipper who was 6 for 8 with a second and then ran really badly. She was 9-2 morning line today. She aired it 3-1. The other was an Irish horse that had won a Group 3 in Ireland. She had a really bad race. She came to the U.S. and ran at Kentucky Downs, as you mentioned, but in a stake. So this was her first race on Lasix. She won at 9-2. Bold Discovery fits that entirely. She wins a Group 3 in May at Leopardstown off a 8-month layoff, and then 10th, 6th, 10th. She comes here. She gets Lasix and blinkers. She has a workout for a good trainer, a little underrated, Andy McKeever. Gets Brian Hernandez. If people don't know the horses she ran against, in the last race she ran against Mutasarrif, who won, Diego Velasquez, who won 2 stakes in a row, and Mountain Bear, who just ran, I think, in the Coolmore Mile, if I remember correctly. So this horse has a lot of class, dropping from Group 3 to allowance. I don't think a 12-1 is going to hold up, but I really like the 1 and 2 here again for win bets, keys, and then I'll go deeper, as I mentioned, with some of the others.
You mentioned my horse on top, the 12 Taking Candy. Do you consider the outside post a bit prohibitive here?
Not with Jose. And in mile 16th, I watched a friend of mine had a horse today from the 12 post that ended up being too wide and third before they hit the turn. I think there's enough horses inside that don't have any really desire to lead. 8 Mr. Muldoon will probably go to the lead, and that puts Taking Candy in a good spot. So I'm not worried about the post as much. The horse could probably take up second or third. He's as fast as these. But again, with 3 wins and 2 seconds, those 2 seconds are interesting. They're both in stakes, and both his allowance races, the 1X and the 2X, were wins. And he gets Jose Ortiz. Of course, he's going back on Lasix, which were his last 2 wins, and the stakes weren't. So I'm going to definitely use him. I said 110, 1, 2, 10, 12 is for sure 4 deep that I'm going in the race. And again, maybe Irish Aces, but I'm not worried about the post as much as some people might be.
Ellis mentioned Mr. Muldoon, the 8, 3 for 3 since switching back to the turf up at Canterbury, gets the try on Saturday at Keeneland in the allowance in race 8. We move to race 9. It is the grade 2 Raven Run. This is for 3-year-old fillies, 7 furlongs on the dirt, $350,000 in this one. We've had some really cool horses win this race, Ellis, and it stands out as one of the I think one of the jewels of this meet. Horses in here that people certainly have heard of. Emery, who recently ran in the test, will be the favorite, almost certainly. My Main Squeeze in here, if you watch the Dogwood and watch her dominate the Dogwood at this distance under Louis Size, who keeps them out there. I think a really fun field here. Emery at 7-5, man. Is she worthy of that number?
She'll be the favorite because of the test, and because in the test she finished in front of My Main Squeeze. Is she worthy of that? No. Because, at the end of the day, and I do this all the time with people, handicapping is art and science. It's mostly art. The science is determining probability. And I think if you ran the race 100 times, My Main Squeeze and Emery would win the same number of races, about 28, 30 times out of 100. About 5-2 is where they should both be. Emery's really overbet with that. And with 3-year-olds, you can assume they're still maturing a little bit. But I looked at this race strictly from the perspective of speed figures and using buyers or equibase. I don't care, whatever you are. Emery's no faster than My Main Squeeze. When My Main Squeeze won the 8 bells, she got 100 equibase speed figure, and that was on a sloppy track. And that was, of course, May 3rd. And then Emery won the Leslie's Lady a month later, and she got a 98 equibase speed figure. So she ran a little slower, just slightly. But then the victory ride in the test, 98 and 99. My Main Squeeze, 98 in the Charlestown Oaks, which is really a 2-turn race. But then 96 in Dogwood, when she won by 5, she could have gone faster. So I think if My Main, it's an if then. If My Main Squeeze repeats the Dogwood, and if Emery repeats the test, they're equal in my mind. So My Main Squeeze, I think 4-1 is going to be a little reset. But I would take 5-2 or 3-1 on her. I definitely use Emery in the sequence. But a couple others are just as fast, in my opinion, or almost as fast, and offer so much value. Fibber, the one who was 5 lengths behind My Main Squeeze. Before that, won the Audubon Oaks. And before that, ran a race at Churchill. Now, again, using Churchill for an example, June 28th, 6.5 at Churchill. She won by 3. It was a optional non-winners of 2X, almost a stakes race. She got a 102 equity speed figure. She ran faster than either of these horses. Why should she be 10 to 1? Well, the reason she's 10 to 1 is because, and no disrespect to Nick Tomorrow, it's a tough job to make a line, but My Main Squeeze beat her by 5. I see that. So that makes sense. But her 2 races before that are absolutely good enough to win. And the other one is Hall and Ice on the outside with a similar thing. Probably didn't like the 2 turns in Charlestown Oaks. Her 1-turn races are phenomenal. 4 wins, 3 seconds, and 7 1-turn races. Nothing wrong. She won the Azalea Stakes at 7 furlongs. The only time she ran 7 around 1 turn in her career. And she won it by 9 lengths with a 98 Equibase speed figure. So 12 to 1. So I get my philosophy of this race is going to be similar to the Prairieville, where I'm going to split the favorites in the exotics. And I just personally, and people can do this, and try and play the prices. So for this case, I would take like Fibber and Hall and Ice over My Main Squeeze, Emery, Fibber and Hall and Ice. Reverse it. Play My Main Squeeze, Emery, Fibber and Hall and Ice over Fibber and Hall and Ice. And if My Main Squeeze never in 1-2, I lose. But that's going to be the lowest paying possible combination. But I think there's lots of ways. If anybody talked to me about any of the other horses race, I probably wouldn't argue, because a lot of these horses still have not run their best races yet.
So Louis Size is going to keep them out on My Main Squeeze, which means that Francisco Arrieta is going to be back aboard. A horse that's won on synthetic, that is won on a race taken off of the different places, running on turf. What would you do with Twirling Queen here? She's obviously worked at Keeneland, so we're not worrying about shipping here, Ellis. 10 to 1, is that a good value on a horse like that? I mean, she's just a winner, right?
No, absolutely. 3 horses came back out of that race to win. She's gone 7, but that was early in her career, so I can ignore it. I love the blowout at Keeneland. I think she had a race of work since then. I only mine October 4th, because I think I printed these PPs a few days ago. 98 Equibase speed figure. She's won on all 3 surfaces. And again, if I like Fibber and Hall and Ice, if you said I think Twirling Queens is good, I would say yes, absolutely, go for it. You're getting that kind of price, definitely.
Right. Yeah, I think the value's there for sure.
Yep.
That is the 4
100%.
Twirling Queen here. Jose D'Angelo trades. They'll close the card with another one of these classic Keeneland maiden specials at the end. Mile on the turf here. This is for 2-year-old fillies, 100K. In the kitty here. Wesley Ward is usually great in these spots. He's having a tough meet, though, frankly, by his standards. At Keeneland, certainly hitting the board, but not winning at the percentage that we're used to here. He has running away at 9 to 5, coming out of a run at Saratoga in July. A little bit of time off. And look, if you look at if you look at all the lines on the form here, 25% off the layoff, 33% with 2-year-olds, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They're all great. We got a chance at a single here, or are we going to have to use a couple horses?
You got to go deeper. I one stat I looked at, which is really odd, because Wesley isn't known for this. Wesley Ward with turf route maiden specials the last 3 years, 1 for 25. 1 for 25. This horse was 10 to 1, not well regarded. The 3rd horse did come back to win. The workouts are fantastic. Going to go for the lead. The rail's at 10 feet. Early in the meet, going for the lead worked. Tori did it a couple times. It certainly can happen here, but not a single at all. So I'll start by saying that I'm 5 deep now. I might cut it back, but it's 8, 6, 7, 5, 10. And I am still kicking myself. Last Sunday, I know what race it was, but Grand Motion had a 2nd-time starter stretching out a turf sprint to a route at 8 to 1, and I marked it, and I didn't bet it. And
that's what he does.
It's what he does.
What he does.
And this, I didn't even have to watch the video of this race, even though it says broke, slow, pinched, run. The running line is 8-14 back, and the wire 4-2 back. So by Speightstown, out of a dam that's thrown multiple winners. Grand Motion now, after that win on Sunday, is 7 for 30. Turf, route, sprinter route, 2nd-time starters in the last 5 years. Small number, but it's a nice percentage. I don't think she'll be 12 to 1. Saez gets on. He's been running Ruiz earlier in the meet, but he's using Saez here. So that's my top pick in terms of I'm not letting Motion beat me again after Sunday.
I get it.
Yeah. Take note of this. The 6 ran at Kentucky Downs. She's got better with every race. 8th, 6th, 2nd, beating the neck. It was her first. It was a mile. I should say that. No knock to Asmussen's kids. Keith and Eric ride great, but when Torres rode this horse for the first time last time, that was the best race ever. And again, she lost by a neck at 6-1. She's 9-2 morning line here. Tremendous breeding for the Scharbauers. Ghost apparatus of a tiny former mare. He screams route and turf. So the 6th is second pick. Evelyn Louise, also sprint route. Vicky Oliver had 2 winners at the meet on dirt, I think they were, stretching out off sprints with not great form. But again, this is a great pattern. Just a thought. I'm sure, again, people listening and yourself, when I see a running line that looks like this, 5-4-3-3, and the lengths behind in a sprint are 3-3-5-7, basically means the horse is running even. That projects to a horse on the lead in a route. Now, again, you're going to have running away to contend with as well. But when running away led, it was 24-49, so not fast fractions. So Evelyn Louise may have the lead here. And Junior Alvarado's riding at Keeneland Saturday instead of in New York. So he's riding the Mod horse, of course, earlier in the card. So Evelyn Louise is certainly a horse that could be sneaky, and I'm not going to let it beat me. One long price here is Grove City Sunset, 9th in a debut, but a debut in a route. Second time out at Ellis Park, ran 4th beating the length when added blinkers, and then Kentucky Downs ran lousy. Then run lousy. 6th, 3rd, and then faded and did nothing. So made a middle move. Can't say what, but a decent trainer in Kelsey Danner, 30-1. I'm not going to leave him off. Not going to leave her off my ticket. And the 10 Birkin Girl is the last one. Good debut, sprinting at Ellis Park. And then at 7-2 favorite at Kentucky Downs, ran lousy, 9th of 11. So I'm 5 deep in the race. I could make the case for the first time starter Judith for John Thomas, but the dams only throw that. Well, first of all, I don't like horses starting first time out of 2 turns in this circuit because it's just tough. But he's 1 for 37, so probably stay away from that.
Answers that question for you. That's right. Yeah.
It's just some trainers, like Kenny McPeak. He always says he gives his horses a test drive a lot, and Thomas does the same thing apparently based on that. But Irad's riding, and I wouldn't knock it. But it's tough. If I go shallow, I'm going to use High Breeze. Take note of this, Evelyn Louise. I might try to beat Running Away only because of that stat with Ward, which is just really odd for a guy that wins such a high percentage to only be 1 for 25 in turf route maidens locally. It's small sample, so I got to be careful, but still, I might try and beat her.
Yeah, if he's 2 for 26, I don't think we'd be stunned. But it's hard to bet 1 out of 25 for sure. My note said ask Ellis about the 8 High Breeze, but apparently I don't need to do that. We landed on the same horse, so there you go. I'm watching Graham Motion just pick off turf races in California like it's fun, whatever. So it is what it is, Ellis. But he's Ellis Starr. He's old, Go ahead.
He's the kind of trainer like McGahee, like Mott, that you really won't fire first time out because he's getting them to understand what's going on. And the second race is pull the trigger.
Yeah, Rusty Arnold always stands out like that for me when I'm betting up here and in Ellis in different places 100%. For sure. Well, he's Ellis Starr. He's at Uber Capper on Twitter. Find him on 708 different websites as well. Ellis, we really appreciate it, buddy. We'll talk to you another time.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Everybody has a great weekend. Lots of sun in Kentucky, and enjoy it and make some money.
There you go. Thanks, Ellis. All right, that was Ellis Capper, Uber Capper Ellis Starr, joining us here on the Horse Racing Happy Hour. Reminder, October 29th, we'll be hanging out at the BA Colonial in the south end of Louisville, across from Iroquois Park, our annual Breeders' Cup seminar. Come out and find us there. No charge to get in. We will have a cash bar. Jay Shepherd Cigars hanging out, and our friends from Amwager, amwager.com. They've got a promo going right now. 150 in, they'll match up to that amount. So up to $150, they will match dollar for dollar in your deposit. So go check them out. We'll be using them for all of our bets at Breeders' Cup this year. My name's Louis Rabeau. We're going to get out of here. It's time to go put my kids to bed and all of the other things. Thanks for joining us here on the Horse Racing Happy Hour.